there was a guy working in Leighton's, and he appointed both Philip Cox and myself. I got to do the convention centre, he got to do the exhibition building, yeah. Much to his chagrin, he wanted to do both, but anyway, that typical...
Let's say hello to Philip because he'll be watching this video. Yeah. Hello, Philip.
Yeah, Philip. I recall that there was quite some attempt for the two buildings to be done by the one architect, but it didn't happen that way.
Was Leighton's driving that?
Leighton's were driving it to start with, yeah.
Okay.
I don't know where they finished that, how they... I didn't get in... I never got into that political stuff. I didn't play that game, you know, so much to my you know, problem, I think. I should have played it a lot more than I did. These meetings with so-called design types, you know, that, but I don't know, we just sort of went ahead. We set the office up down. You know, I play a game with these bloody people. You know, we bought a beautiful old ferry, and I set it up as an office. Originally, it was the ferry from I think it was from Melbourne, went from Geelong to Melbourne. That was the original, you know, the ferry. So it was just a big old ferry, you know. And that was our office down there. And I used to take people out for lunch on it and that sort of thing. I recall Andrew Anderson's coming out for lunch on the ferry, and these guys, they loved it. They sort of, you know, it was the best way to deal with them.
Yeah.
Where have your meeting on the ferry and, you know, get some sandwiches or something, go up and down the... In fact, we used to get it catered depending on who it was for. And, you know, there were ways and means of doing things that sort of could...
What do you mean?
Well, I could draw people's attention away from the thing they were most interested in, like trying to get you to do what they want you to do. I'd be more interested in getting them to do what I want them to do. So you accept somebody's invitation for lunch on a boat on Sydney Harbour, you're not going to be much of a problem. Well, it's a much gentler time than now. Now, if you're going to use a boat today, use a fucking destroyer or something. You know, use a nice old ferry. The architectural principles are, you know, I don't know whether we've got them anymore. I don't know what they are. I mean, I sort of, I have great difficulty in believing that the way some architects are operating these days, in fact, you know, where everything is given over to engineering. I mean, I just don't believe it. I think there's a bunch of rules that I like to adhere to. Mm-hmm. Or, you know, the things that have to do with how people use spaces and things like that. Things that have to do with not only how people use spaces, but how spaces are in fact used by people, which is a different thing.
Mm-hmm.
There's very little written in briefs these days that have anything to do with the way spaces are used. Mm-hmm. It's really left up to the architect as to, you know, how things may happen, I think. Now, I'm not doing much architecture these days. It's probably a reason for that. Nobody wants me to do it anymore. But well, first of all, the idea of there's a maximum distance from the speaker that you want it to be. I mean, the idea of the semicircle was, as far as I'm concerned, was absolutely sacrosanct. As I said earlier, it was to the Romans as well. But it also was capable of being cut into 3 different operating functions, and that was I think that was a bit more than what they needed or they even asked for. But the other thing was that there had to be the same amount of space for the people in the convention hall. I think there were 3,500, weren't there? They needed to be the same that they could go to for meetings after they came out of the main hall. There was, the addition of the spaces beyond the main hall added up to the same amount of space. But so literally it was a building. It held 7,000 people in full operation. But you couldn't say that it held 7,000 people, because most of the time they were doing 2 things. As I recall, the way the thing worked, you filled the kitchens behind the parts of the semicircle. You filled those for the most distant one first, and you worked your way back to the kitchen. I think we were given fairly free rein, to be fair. I mean, if there's some complaint about that, it was our fault, I suppose. Well, one large part of it was Bob Woodward and the fountain. I mean, the integration of that fountain with what we were doing was very important. That sort of was beginning to relate the convention centre to the harbour, and to an activity that eventually was. I hope they keep that thing. Well, I think I'd have to say, obviously, we designed it so it could grow, because it was part of the brief. Well, also, I think it was for more people than finally was stuffed in it to begin with, right? I think the intended seating arrangement was for more than they finally got, more than they finished up with. Oh, absolutely. I mean, what would result in, I think, standing today had been if the decisions that were made by people who knew the price of bloody wine. That was. I cannot to this day understand the decision-making process that went on to destroy a building that was not only booked out for years in future. It was performing very adequately, and it solved a lot of problems when it was built, a lot of teething problems. For instance, the major artworks in there were commissioned by me to cover up shoddy work. There were major flaws in the concrete work that, under the specification, the concrete work would need to be demolished, except for the fact that we were able to convince the contractor that we could cover those up with artwork, another purpose for art. The convention centre, of course, was sort of I'd have to say there was a lot of the. If I say me, I don't mean, let me say us, as a firm in the convention centre. We weren't asked to do all the things that were done there. Nobody asked for tall spaces and things like that, and visual things where you can see different levels, and they didn't ask for that. They don't brief that sort of thing. I mean, a lot of that sort of feeling of the building really comes from the architect, I think. It pleases me at all, but it's just the way it is.
Okay, why do you think that is?
I'd have to say there's a degree of sort of tall poppy syndrome going. I was not here for years. Then I moved back here with somewhat of a reputation and that sort of thing. So there's still a fair degree of resentment to being here. It couldn't. Things like that wouldn't happen to the conventions that have been in Canada. It wouldn't happen. That's sort of you got much more sort of respect, if you like, as an architect in Canada than you got here. I can only think that it's sort of that degree of jealousy, no question about that. But so what? I've had a fairly good run here, I suppose, in many ways. I don't think we're taught to value it.
Okay.
I don't recall.
You're saying academically or culturally?
Well, both.
Okay.
Both. I don't recall any time at Sydney University where I was given to understand we had some things of value in the architectural world. We were getting Harry Seidel was beginning to build a reputation for modern buildings, but I don't think he did a great deal to sort of support existing buildings. Postmodernism doesn't appeal to me at all.
Okay. Why is that?
I think it's basically false.
False in what way?
In what it's in its attitudes and what it's trying to accomplish, and what do I think is? I guess also it's based on the wrong premise. It's not based on solving sort of social problems and things like that. More based on good looks or more based on what's supposed to be good looking or something. I doubt if it was about the financial aspects of it. As my information is that it was financially doing well and had no problem whatsoever. So it had to be about the society, and it had to be about the fact that we were prepared to knock down a good building. And who's prepared to knock down good buildings? Mostly architects, Luddites. I mean, when you think about it, that was a completely irresponsible decision to get rid of either the convention centre or the Philip Cox building. Totally irresponsible. I think I would say that you really have to find out for yourself what the problem, any building, what its problems are. Just not take any notice of anybody else because they don't tell you the truth. And there's certainly no truth as eventuated out of certainly the convention centre, to my knowledge. I have not learnt what I would consider to be the truth at all. It's all just been lies that are stacked upon lies in order to promote an idea to get rid of a building that's a good building. Well, it's an interesting parallel, the Sydney Convention Centre to a lot of what happened in Rome in the older day. They also had the great difficulty with good wine, as I recall. It was one of the reasons for their demise, and it's interesting to sit here and see it happening again.